Pushpa, I Love You, a short story written and narrated by Gifty Ruben Prabhas. Hi, I'm Anjali. It's weird that I forgot his name. I met him as if he came out of gate number 0. That's how people's shadows appear out of the black in Iflu sometimes. I wasn't sure if the shadow was that of a single person or of a couple making out. I had turned back quickly and awkwardly, walking away from the gate that used to be, dancing the walk to the music that filled my head and spilled from my limbs. Hello, he called out to me for the fifth time. The sixth time, he caught up with me, stretching his hand to pat on my shoulder. It startled me. I turned back as if I had stumbled. The music slipped out of my ears, and I heard him say sorry. My startling had startled him too. Only when I saw my silver anklet curled in that stranger's hand did I recognize the ornament's absence from my ankle. It might have been all that zigzagging on the road that connects and divides the VC's lawn and the VC's house. The metal had unhooked itself. I had been listening to Ophelia on loop. When I took my anklet into my hand, it was wet and cold from those earlier steps when I had kicked the puddles on the tar road like Wesley Schultz in the video. The anklet was a little less muddy in my hand, a little less cold, and a little less wet than it had been when he picked it off the ground. Pocket your anklet the next time you dance on the road, he said, trying to dust off the dirt from his hand and only dirtying both of them. Both of us knew our next stop, the wash basins in NAB ground floor. It was the few lines we exchanged in the vacillating manner of reading the subtitles and looking up at the picture that we agreed without saying that whoever comes out of the washroom first would wait for the other. When I came out of the washroom, I saw him looking at the notice board in front of the conference room, humming a song that I could not recognize from the distance because he stopped humming when he turned his head to see me approaching. It is to these early lines that I turn to remember if he had told me his name. Which song? I had asked. Love of my life, he had said. I find myself humming to Queen as I wait for him sitting on top of this waist level tank in front of Bashir. He had gone upstairs to get his bike keys. We agreed to go to the food trucks in Habsiguda as we were past the mess time, having lost track of time in our conversation. What is your name? Did either of us ask? Maybe we did tell each other's names and forgot. I do not know because the memorable conversation came with its forgetfulness. It's like failing to remember your own impromptu dance steps as you look back at the long straight road that you had zigzagged, or losing count of time and words spoken in the circular walks in the campus that you look back as a long straight road. Certain details were lost behind the oxymoronic walled gate. The origins bright but vague, beautiful but anonymous, like a star shining at you in the distance, against the void from which it emerged. There he is. He had changed into a green kurta, and his effort to look good both flattered me and made me nervous. He stopped to drink water from the water cooler at the entrance of Bashir. He gestured at me if I wanted water. I walked up the slant entrance of the men's hostel, standing just on the water cooler border, and the guards pretended not to look at me as much as I pretended not to look at them. He filled water in that glass that had a sharp and perforated rim. The water had a specific taste that became more familiar over time. Sorry I took so long. My roommate left with the key. I had to break the lock. I thought of calling you, but I didn't have your number, he said. Cue to exchange phone numbers. His untitled phone number stared back at me. I looked at his phone screen. My phone number stared back untitled at both of us. We laughed and reminded each other our names, nonchalantly, without a handshake. What's in a name? Anjali. Vishwas. I like your perfume, I said on the way to the vehicle. I had gotten the mess food up to my room to eat it in my own time, and most importantly, to watch some show while eating. I was watch eating How I Met Your Mother when I saw Vishwas's text. Come meet me at the breakup tree when you're done. Don't worry, I'm not breaking up. I paused my computer screen. I'm one of those people who can't do with just audio. I need to read the subtitles. Even subtitles without audio would do actually. Sure, if you're not breaking up, I will. Just kidding. See you soon. I typed the reply, scattering some roti dust onto my mobile screen. I did not see him at the breakup tree. I went and sat upon the white retaining wall around that tree, with my back to the stone idol. Just when I unlocked my phone to text him, I felt his pat on my shoulder. I still got startled. After all these weeks, I should have gotten used to it. I turned back just in time to see his hand that retracted back to him, hiding on the other side of the tree. I stood up and moved a few steps to the left around the border of that knee length Taurus of the breakup tree. He moved just as many steps to the right, aligning the tree trunk exactly in between the both of us. We were two opposite points on a circle's border, blocked from viewing each other by the root at the center. We moved around the tree like the last two standing players of a musical chairs game, walking running around one chair, opposite to each other at every beat of the song that would have to play for the game to start and stop for the play to end. Like the last two players, when the music stopped, one would unconsciously sit on the lap of the other. We consciously stopped our running around with an embrace. We sat and kissed under the leaves. Both of us were exactly opposite to the guard at the crossroads, like Vishwas and I had been to each other moments before. The illusory privacy offered by the splitting tree that has been there on this campus before the three of us. If there were people who had to awkwardly turn back looking at us, I did not know. Like all making out on campus, this was interrupted too. Vishwas's phone rang. We still kissed through a few replays of the ringtone before Vishwas slowly pulled back and said, Sorry, I have to take this. It should be my roommate asking for the key. Yeah, man, I'm at the breakup tree, he said. I'll get to meet his roommate Paul finally. Vishwas kissed me on the cheek and we hugged with eyes closed tight and noses wide open before we moved to the face of the tree to receive his roommate. Is there anything I should know about your roommate? I asked Vishwas. Just at the top of my head. He goes crazy when I use his stuff without asking. Wait, I have told you that already. He plays good football. I have finally told him to leave his shoes outside the door. He's in English literature. Whom we greeted at our front door first was not his roommate, but my roommate Meenakshi. This has become like a routine. She would take a walk after doing her readings late into the night at the reading room. A gentle reminder that I should make progress with my readings too. Vishwas and I had already made a plan to give each other some time to study, coming into effect from tomorrow. Don't you judge me, even my roommate doesn't. Vishwas and I waved at her. She took off her earphones as she approached us. My roommate is a good actor to maintain a friendly conversation with Vishwas. Back in the room, she would tell me some unbelievably creepy stories about him, that she had heard from other people on the campus. We were talking about Professor Syed when I saw walking towards the three of us the green kurta that I had seen Vishwas wear on our first late date. Rule number one, say nothing about the kurta. Hi, I greeted Paul. Vishwas placed the vulnerable key without any keychain into Paul's hand, like handling change that had slipped. I can see another log breaking coming. Paul, Anjali, Anjali, Paul. Meenakshi, Paul, Paul, Meenakshi. Hi, I have seen you in Kona's class, said Paul to Meenakshi. As they walked back in the same direction, talking about Shakespeare, the library borrowed copy of Hamlet that Meenakshi was carrying on that walk, I thought of something that one of my seniors had told me. When girls could enter boys' hostel and vice versa, if two roommates from Bashi dated two roommates from MBC, one of the girls would move into the boys' hostel and vice versa. On our way back, Vishwas and I stopped just a few steps right from the breakup tree at the chopped tree trunk. Just one of our conscious delays before going back. He stood behind me and spoke into my ear. I always had this thought. This chopped tree trunk is what completes the name of the breakup tree. Look there and here. A story told, a song sung, a name explained by just turning one's head. The breakup is the butchering of a single tree. As he spoke the play's poetry, I had a strange sensation of something like a seed dropping into my ear. But his words distracted me from the sensation. Meenakshi came back to the room later than me that night, and in the morning she went her earliest to Professor Kona's class. I found tender leaves that achingly fell on my pillow, on the sink where I combed my hair, and on my notebooks in the classroom. Vishwas said he had an assignment to submit tonight. He finally texted me at around 12:30. It was still drizzling slightly. We decided to meet anyway. He told me he would wait in front of my hostel with an umbrella. I changed into the knee length red skirt that I had worn earlier that day. I wanted him to see me in that during the day, but our paths did not cross. Now that I think of it, I seldom see him during the daytime. Our timetables are so mismatched that we never run into each other in between classes. I should not have written that unnecessary final page. I looked out of my window at around 10:30. Good weather. In between rains is the perfect time to walk, he said, as if he had rehearsed that line while waiting in front of MBC, awkwardly avoiding eye contact with the guards at the entrance and the girls who came out. I stared out of the window more times than that, I replied. We walked right towards Hasina Chowk. I sensed his nervousness from the moment I stepped under the umbrella, the nervousness of an actor anticipating the revelation in the next scene while trying not to reveal it ahead of its time. I know I can recognize the same nervousness from that time he took out from his jacket's inner pocket a Toblerone bar he had bought for me from Karachi, or another night when he pulled up from his right leg the rose that he fit between his sock and his calf. Two rolled tissues protected his leg from the thorns. What had protected the petals from the movement of the leg was the puff wala paper pouch that he had taken from Sagar without a puff. He had especially worn longer socks and looser pants that day to carry the rose. While going back to the room, I had carried that rose by strapping the stem to my waist with my skirt and the petals hid behind the peplum of my top. Today he was more practically dressed in rubber chappals for the rain, jacket and jeans for the warmth. He complimented me on my skirt for the second time. His script was running out. He still held the umbrella when it had stopped raining like 15 minutes back. The more afraid he was, the higher my expectations were. My anticipation was unbearable. I led him to the right. You know that make-out dead end at the side entrance to the Joggers Park? I wanted to kiss him away from his nerves. I wanted to check his clothes for hidden things, like at a security pass. We walked 2 buildings when we spotted a couple already claiming that spot. There are more spots on this 32-acre campus. I took him towards the heritage well. He closed the umbrella as we climbed the steps at the back to see and smell the well from a vantage point on itself, stinking in its drowned glory. Glass crackled and grass got compressed under our soles as we stood facing each other. I kissed his neck that was aligned to the moon in the sky above and behind him. There was a power cut in between our embrace. We did not stop. We snapped from the lick lock, our lungs full of our breath, and saw each other's faces under the shine of the moon that we had pulled closer with a string. If he is not going to say it, I will. I did not have an assignment to submit. I was making something for you, he said, as if this line was meant to be said only after the lights went out. Finally, what is it? You will see. Where was this part of him that we had to walk to get there? What was it that it could not fit in a spotlight? Turn off the light, he said, as if to prove something he had told me on another day. That he knew the campus so well that he could walk it blindfolded. The light went off. His perfume smelled stronger in the dark, and his touch felt lighter. Every step on the road lured me. I walked attached to him as if being pulled slant like a suitcase with just 2 back wheels. We were on the road in between the entrances to Akka and Bashir. He did not stop walking as we turned left, and I did not stop spelling. The perfume just reached the periphery under my glimmering skin. The guard sitting on the chair did not stop us as we entered the boys' hostel. I thought they closed this gate at 10. Since when? Girls are not allowed into the hostel, right? Ha, since when? The power was back on when we reached the 3rd floor. C Wing, the paint on the wall announced. Somehow I wasn't surprised that the next floor said M Wing, as if I had been to the hostel before. We were walking through that long cement stretch of the 4th floor from where I could see MBC on the left. The power went off again. No one shouted anything. We climbed to the 5th floor. I held the torch for him as he broke the sealed lock. I walked in after him. A candlelit room. Pasted to the walls and bunched on the tables, I saw edible roses from his skulls. Spread all over the bed were chocolates from his breast. Behind him was a non-grilled window of his room with a view of the VC's lawn. The green has become invisible. The candles had been melted to half their length and colored the air in the room yellow. When he got onto his knee, I could not see the towering flagpole in the VC's lawn anymore. To the right, I knew there was a gate that opened. I love you, Pushpa. I love you, he said, trembling so much in hunger that he had to shift his other knee to the ground too. As soon as he said it, he could not look me in the eye. He was eye level with my red skirt. I held both of his hands and knelt down. 4 knees cupped and cleared months of even dust on the floor. I love you too, Upayan, I replied. The wind from the opened window blew the dust off the many frames on the wall that held pictures of Pushpa and Upayan that had been printed from KV. When the guards checked the CCTV footage of Bashir's front entrance, they could spot Vishwas leaving the hostel in a green kurta. Bhaiya, the guard called out to Vishwas, pointing the key-chained keys that had fallen down from his torn pocket. Vishwas picked up the jingling key bunch. The guard later told the police that Vishwas smiled at the guard, nodding his head as he walked away. This was the second time that day that the keys fell down. The CCTV footage in front of the guest house spotted Vishwas hurrying on his bike to go to the benches to meet a girl whose name his roommate Paul said Vishwas had sworn that he forgot. Paul was an MA French student. He further added that Vishwas was in a surprisingly good mood that last night because he told Paul that he could use his laptop while he was away and wrote down the password on a stick note. That was very unlike Vishwas, who strictly did not like sharing his things. Vishwas's disappearance was similar to an earlier incident. A student named Anjali had gone missing 14 months back, last sighted in the CCTV footage in front of MBC. She walked out and away in a red skirt with a closed umbrella in her hand. The last words that were heard from her were heard as she left her hostel room. Without looking up from her desk where she spent half of her waking hours, Anjali's roommate Meenakshi had asked her, "Who's the guy?" As Anjali left the room, she had quoted Shakespeare without turning back. What's in a name? People have been going missing non periodically. Lions eat all of their prey before hunting for the next. Crocodiles can go several months without food. Whales can have people living inside their cave stomachs without vomiting them onto the shore. People sitting on the waist length tank in front of Bashir found themselves humming along to Love of My Life. People walking away from gate number 0 heard the rhythmic jingle of an untraceable anklet. People found rose petals inside the football socks that had been tucked into the shoes that had been left outside the doors. The number of paper pouches that went out from Sagar were always more than the takeaways. People heard the frightening confessions of love every time there was a power cut. The most frightening, hush-toned, candle-lit confession camouflaged behind the shouts of high monotone. People heard whispered commands to turn off the flashlights, which went out by themselves if they did not turn them off themselves. Some people sleepwalked to the breakup tree at night to walk around the tree and worship the idol. Students watching movies and TV shows at the computer lab thought they saw two faces reflected on the screen during the dark frames of the montages, as if two people had been watching the screen from behind the chair. They countered this feeling with the reasoning that no one could possibly watch anything without the audio. No one could switch off the subtitles from the computers in the lab though. The guards at MBC's entrance pretended they did not see, on rainy nights, raindrops falling through that rain-colored umbrella hovering across the road. The guard sitting at the crossroads ahead of Joggers Park's main entrance did not tilt his head to the right. It was not them avoiding him, but him avoiding them. The guards at Bashir Hostel's back entrance pretended they did not see the translucent couples. One ghost, always more opaque than the other, go into the hostel.